We all set? We ready? We recording right now. Matter of fact, I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of the Creative Crowns Talk Show. We got an actual little banner. Shout out Nick Wilden back for going ahead and drawing this up for us. And of course, you got Ed behind the camera. Shout out Miss Label Productions. Shout out For Artists by Artists platform. Again, Creative Crowns is a platform meant to showcase our artists that are out here grinding, working, doing their thing. We want to make sure we give them a nice little spotlight to show love. And this person we got today is really one of my homies, one of my OGs, one of my recent OGs, and somebody that has opened the doors. When I literally mean open the doors to some of the most unique places I could ever be in or perform at. This is the man that has opened up those doors. A poet, a photographer, a space maker, a real deal event planner, and one of my closest friends in the city. I want y'all to make some noise for the one and only diade'angelo. Dia, what's up, my brother? How you living, sir?
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Listen, let me get that. Listen. Much love, my brother. I appreciate you so much. Absolutely. Dia, I first off, super grateful that you were able to make time for us today.
I'm thankful for being here.
Nah, man.
Space and time.
Nah, of course. We always gonna make space for the people that are really out here working and providing that space for artists. Again, I know I mentioned that you were a poet, photographer. You do so much more than that. I didn't even give you your intro didn't do you the justice that it deserves. So go ahead and let the people know more about you, who you are, and kind of like just give them the Dia special.
Yeah. No, thank you, Faze. I can't say that enough.
Of course.
For like nurturing the space, you, Nick, and the crew. Thank you each for making space for this. But yeah, like I love Charlotte. I'll just start by saying that. You know, I'm not a Charlatan, but this space has really nurtured and cultivated my love for the work that I do. As a community organizer, a theologian, a poet, performance artist. Now I serve as a director of education and community engagement at the Independent Picture House. Right. So really trying to provide space and platforms for the creatives here in Charlotte. And we have some of the world's most phenomenal creatives, period. I put our city up against any city on the map. But trying to make space for the creatives that we can continue to nurture a deeper dialogue across poetic and performance mediums, visual arts, performance art, cinema, whatever it may be. I'm really elevating the status of what's taking place here. So I consider myself primarily, I'm a theologian, but my theological output or spaces tend to be those creative spaces that I consider to be sacred.
Heavy, absolutely.
So that's what it is for me.
Yes, sir, absolutely. So where does it all start off for you as far as like your interest in theology, and honestly before even that, like where you from originally?
Yeah, I'm from Vietnam. So, I love Charlotte. Charlotte is deep on my heart.
Yes, sir.
But Vietnam is home.
Yes, sir.
The 2-6, that's home for me. And it's a strange relationship with the space. Like you come to Fayetteville or you come through there. I would say I'm writing a collection of poems now, and this is not the title, but this is my working title. Fayetteville is like the home of like strip clubs, pawn shops.
Word.
Fayetteville State. Like that's when someone mentioned in Fort Bragg, when people say or mention Fayetteville. They're typically thinking about like the military base
Absolutely.
there, which I got a conflict with some of the fittings of that. But it's the space that nurtured me. It's the space that nurtured the understanding of who I desire to be in the world. That dichotomy that exists there. So I say Fayetteville is the place, the birth space. But the nurturing really comes through Charlotte.
Absolutely. At what point in time, how long you in Fayetteville, aka Vietnam? How long were you in Fayetteville before you came down to Charlotte?
Yeah, like I was born and raised there.
Gotcha.
My family's Gullah.
Gotcha.
But my family ended up being stationed in Fort Bragg, which eventually became Fort Liberty, going back to Fort Bragg soon. So I made it to Charlotte by way of after undergrad at App State.
Gotcha.
Came down to Charlotte for grad school. I left the country for a period of time, for about 5 years, but I would always come back to Charlotte. There was something mystical and magical about Charlotte at the time and still exists then and now. And Charlotte was a place, it was one of the few places that I lived in that was, and you've heard me say this before, it was small enough to have these interpersonal relationships that you could really get to know the people that were doing the real labor, yet it was large enough to have true global impact. And I think that's one of the unique and specific things about Charlotte for me.
Very heavy, absolutely. So traveling has been a big part of you just growing up, finding your way through it. Moving, actually, before we even talk about moving, I did want to point out, you brought up Gullah, you brought up a lot of education. How, first, before we get into the Gullah conversation, education, how important is education with you coming up? Because I think that's been a big part, just speaking with you, is being educated. So how's that been? Your time been for that?
Yeah, like, and how it is for me, I just want to stress that it may not, the roadmap for me may not be the best, play out for everyone.
Absolutely.
I wish education was a quality of life. That's how I was nurtured to believe that it could be a quality of life, but in a lot of ways, education has become a business.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm really heartbroken to see a number of, brothers and sisters and others end up going off to college or wherever, and then they're living a life of debt. And the capitalism starts to take over what should be a holistic and a uplifting outlet. But for me, it has played out in healthy ways. So I went to App State. I got my undergraduate degrees are Bachelor of Science in Communication and Sociology, minor in Photography from Appalachian State. I came to Charlotte, got my Master's in Literature from UNC Charlotte. Then I went to Union Presbyterian Seminary. I got a Master's in Divinity and my Doctorate of Ministry there. Graduate certifications in Theopoetics and Theological Imagination from Bethany Theological Seminary. And I'm finishing up. I'm done now. After this, I'm done.
Are you sure?
But yeah, I'm sure for sure. But I'm finishing up my MFA in poetry at Queen's University of Charlotte.
That's heavy.
And for me, it played out because I was interested in, one, understanding what is my voice. You talk to creatives and you say, what's your voice? And most of them can tell you who they're in dialogue with or who's influenced their work or who's inspired their work, but they may not understand what is their voice. And for me, I needed to know that before some of the money came. I wanted to understand that.
Absolutely.
So that was part of it. And then I knew there was like this spectrum of creatives that I just didn't know about. I mean, I could go online, they're at the touch of my fingertips, but if you don't know the right phrase or word to really type into, to find out what it is you're doing, it's a difficult thing. I'll give an example of that. I consider the work I do theopoetics, that I am a theologian who uses poetry as the primary outlet, so that it's not just what is being created that I'm interested in. I'm interested in the process of creating just as much as the actual creation. And had I not been to college, I don't know when I would have stumbled upon that word. Wow. I would have at some point, but it took, me sitting at the feet of the right individuals to really give me that word. And even having that context of thinking about, like, how can I now look at the sacredness of my experience in Fayetteville, or the sacredness of the ratchet and righteous music that I love as being something sacred, start to really recontextualize and what that means for me. And I had to have like a different type of background for it.
Absolutely.
And the last thing I'll say about that, there is something about, the formalized education we just get through experience. I never want to be dismissive of, like, although I attended these academic institutions that weren't designed for me, many of them weren't designed for me to be there, there is something about the institution of life that no academic degree could ever, equate to in some 100%. Regards. And I would also say the last thing there, that I've come to a point where I am interested in the aesthetics of art, but the real art is the relationships that we nurture, like the vibrations that we have with creatives. Like, that's the real art for me.
Absolutely. That's and again, that's heavy, and especially when you talk about your background, and of course what made you. Again, I was going to bring up, you mentioned that you were Gullah. A lot of people aren't familiar with that. That's a big ethnic conversation down this way. The Gullah Geechee conversation happens a lot down that way, and you actually you not just being a part of it, that's been a part of your art as well, and a part
absolutely.
of your back end. Explain to the people, because that's actually something that a lot of people bring up. You are Gullah. Can you kind of explain that to the people that are not really familiar, what that actually means?
Yeah. So for my branch of the family, like, we were able to keep some of our cultural and religious practices throughout history, that they weren't necessarily stripped away. They were kind of relegated within the context of how we were living, whether it came through the food, it came through the language, if it came through, how the aesthetics and nature of our home. My family specifically is from Tybee Island in Savannah.
Wow, gotcha.
I do have some family in Edisto, but so we were on a certain side of the river, so we were able to keep some of those practices. I think one of the most difficult things, though, Faze, that I've been processing and think about, like, this is how it shows up in my work. I think that we have more individuals in the South that are of Gullah heritage than can claim it. I think when the Great Migration, took away some of it from us. The ideal of when I was, coming through, my parents, they never said, don't speak Gullah. They never said, don't go out and be your most authentic self. But there were definitely spaces where I felt ashamed to really lean into it, because of the cultural context I'm living with. You go to like a PWI, a predominantly white institution, and the last thing they really want is in their minds, they may relegate the language to being something of the ignorant.
Understood.
And I now look at that as like, no, it's quite the opposite. It is a intellectual, ethereal aspect of how to live within my own embodiment and go well beyond the lived experience. So for me, the way it shows up in my work now, I'm interested in having this dialogue with my ancestors that goes beyond space and time. And I'm experiencing that in my work. I'll give an example. You and the brothers in here may not be old enough to know what I'm about to describe here, but I had a relative pass away, and I inherited this suitcase of 8 tracks. And I see Nick bobbing his head like you know what an 8-track is. But I inherited this case of 8 tracks, and I knew there was something special on it because I could see the writing on the outside, and this relates back to being Gullah. And but I didn't know what was on it. So I received this grant. The Art and Science Council, blessed me with a grant, and I was able to use a portion of that to digitize the 8 tracks so I could listen to them for the first time. Wow. And on those 8 tracks, my grandfather, who was Gullah, and also was a theologian and poet, he was on there practicing his sermons and reading his poetry. Wow. So when I'm talking about going beyond space and time, like when I listen to his words now on those 8 tracks, it feels like I'm hearing my voice for the first time, but a more authentic voice of mine before I became more sanitized because of capitalism, academic institutions, before parts of me got assimilated because of patriarchy and all these things. He's in his most authentic and raw Southern voice. So I'm listening to him, I'm hearing myself for the first time. So now I'm writing this poetry that is a response to what he is saying. It's a direct response to what he wrote and what he was practicing in his work. But I think that's something that we're all capable of. People may not have the 8 tracks that I have, and they may not have the cultural heritage that I have, but they got something that tethers them to something greater than self.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that may be a little more than what you asked for, but that's where it took me.
But as it should, and I think that's the whole point, is that it's so deeply intertwined. And again, I was going to ask, that family member did poetry as well. Does poetry run in your family? Does everybody write just some form of writing in the family?
Yeah, just about everyone. I'm hard pressed to think of someone that doesn't. My sister is a poet as well. She's also a theologian.
Absolutely.
She's in Fayetteville. She's there. She serves a church there, and she is a biology teacher there at a private school. But we chat poetry all the time. But if we're not talking about the physical act of poetry, we're talking about what's influencing the poetry. Mm-hmm. That could be, Gullah mythology, comic book cosmology, daily politics, just really chopping it up like found poetry is something I'm a big fan of. If I'm out in public and I hear that one comment or phrase, I'm thinking, let me log that because that's going to show back up in something.
100%.
Yeah. What
has been some of your bigger influences with poetry or really any of your works of art?
That's a great question. I would say the Black church.
It's
like the poetics of the Black church, the spoken and the unspoken. There's something really special and magical about it. And it's one of those things that it's an experience that you can't quite give a word to. What I'm interested in within poetics is sonic poetry. Mm. This is poetry that you may not understand the content of all of it, but the sound takes you back to nostalgia or the remembrance of something. And that's what the Black church was for me, whether it's a hum, a hymn, the repetition of a phrase. It's the same thing we experience if we listen to Heartthrob Ever, Black and Ugly as Ever. It's the same thing that we experience there in the repetition of things. It becomes that earworm that then has a deeper resonance within the body, the physical body. But yes, all my family, I would say, they've always been in the some realm of it. The gateway for me was my dad that raised me. I don't know if he would, and I say dad that raised me, wasn't my biological father, but gotcha. In all spiritual ways, he was my dad. He had this notorious collection of vinyl, mm-hmm. and just going through his collection, seeing like Earth, Wind and Fire, Parliament, Funkadelic, Frankie Beverly and Maze, the soundtrack for Shaft and Superfly.
That's crazy.
Like listening to that music, there was a beyond their words, there's a sonic quality in it that is very hypnotic.
Yes, sir.
And that is what I'm interested in attempting to do with my poetry. It's a little harder to do at times because I think for many poets, we would say that we're being held hostage to wanting it to be published in a traditional manuscript. But some things on the page can't do the same thing that you can do on the stage.
Amen.
And I would say the same about the stage. The stage can't always do what's on the page, but there's something about the live experience. And I would believe that it operates the same way probably for you, with your performances. For sure. Each performance is uniquely different. and we can't control in a recording what we could. Control may be even the wrong word for it. I don't know if we control any of it.
Fair.
Because the vibration is just what it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you bring that up performance wise. I'm big on performance. We're big on performance, so we'll get to that in a minute. Why? But that brings up a great question that I would love to know. With you, because you've obviously written poetry, you've been published multiple times through different mediums, doing either your own or being published outside of your own works. But however, you perform regularly as a poet. Which do you prefer more? Do you prefer writing poetry, performing poetry? Is there a balance either or?
Oh, that's a great question. Wow. I have to really think about that.
See,
there's something about performing, or presenting or living with the poetry in a live experience, the invitation and the gift of the audience to be a part of the work.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if, I love both. I would say when I'm in my studio and I'm alone and I'm writing, that is a spiritual, holistic, meditative moment. And when I'm in a public space and I'm, presenting with a community there, it is a communal dialogue. They may not be chanting the words back at me. It may not be a full call and response like the Black church, but there is something that vibration creates. I can't give it the right words, brother. Like I'm torn.
But I understand that immensely because I've seen, and the reason I ask is because I've read your work, but I've seen you perform live, and I've seen the air change when you perform, and I've seen people, really kind of change their whole demeanor when they listen to you. And I'm, of course, big on performances, so I'm always big on seeing how people react to whoever or whatever is being on stage. So always seeing you and seeing your work is always an amazing thing to see. That does lead me into, we're just talking about community. I would love to know how you got involved into the actual Charlotte creative scene. What is your first interjection in there? If you can remember and tell us.
Yeah. My first intro to the Charlotte creative scene, I was actually, before I, really, started with the local scene. I shouldn't say local because that minimizes the aspect of the reach of Charlotte. I would say Charlotte-based creative versus local. I was living in Guadalajara, Mexico. I came back to Charlotte for a comic book convention, Heroes Con. And at that con, there was this brother's work that I just greatly admired. I thought it was amazing, Wally Vinyl. And so I got Wally's contact information at the con. I went back to Mexico after it, and we stayed in touch. Virtually, we stayed in touch with each other. He had shared with me over the time. He said, we're forming a crew here. When you get back, check us out. Tap into what we're doing. So at the time while I was away, Wally, John Hairston Jr., Marcus Kaiser, and Antoine Williams formed God City. When I got back, I instantly reached out. I reached out and said, hey, I'm interested in tapping in. I'm looking for a community. I'm looking for my own growth and understanding. I'm looking for individuals that I can learn with and from. And they had a big emphasis on edutainment. Mm-hmm. This can be entertainment, coming to these shows, but these also can be moments where we're also like enlightening each other. So got started with God City. Eventually that morphed over into me like looking into residency programs. Did a residency at the Afro-American Culture Center when they were in the church at Little Rock. That led to being at the McCall Center, which led to be, in other residencies and other spaces. And it just opened up the door. It opened up the door for me to better understand my voice, have a deeper and more meaningful relationships with the creators in the community. And there were other creators that were doing the work as well. Concrete Generation, an amazing group of poets that were being established around the same time. Blues, Q Tally, and others. So there was a good synergy, and that synergy still exists. I wish, if there was something that I wish we could have done, I wish we could have archived it or documented it.
I was gonna say, y'all don't have any like footage, anything of y'all like really, because I'm familiar with God's City. Matter of fact, you did a group talks event with Marcus Kaiser, Wally V, John Hairston, and Blues. You brought everybody together at the Independent Picture House. We watched the film Juice and had a conversation about it right after your film series that you've been doing there, and just listening to everybody's history, God City, basically right there. Everybody all at once, giving us a history of God City. I've been familiar with God City since I've been coming up, and even then, I'm still not fully tapped into the lore that is God City. So just to know, again, speaking to one of the original crew members, what was that like, kind of being in that crew at that time and then growing?
It was magical, man. Like I would say, like I put that in my top 5, most profound artistic experiences being with the crew, beginning to end. Like absolutely. It was, the like is, being able to have, and I'm going to speak for the gentleman that was there, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but being able to turn to someone else that understands your embodied experience. I'm like, brother, you saw that too.
Absolutely.
Brother, you felt that too.
Mm-hmm.
That the conversations range from, processing 9/11 to thinking about trickle down theory to having funny conversations about like Afro Samurai or like the next, Del the Funky Homo Sapien album, whatever it was. It was a spectrum that we weren't relegated to just one monolithic thought about what it meant to be a black man.
Absolutely.
Like we had the full gambit and spectrum really represented, and we weren't ashamed of our nerdiness.
100%.
We represented kids from the street, and we represented young men that were nerdy.
Absolutely.
And it was special, and that vibration still exists. And I'm like if there was something different now, I think it is. There's a danger when things become fashionable, and people aren't always invested in like. Documenting the history of it or celebrating the history of it. And some of that, like I look at now and I have to process my own feelings around, but I celebrate that I was able to be a part of and still a part of the fabric of Charlotte, really nurturing something magical and special for individuals that look like you and I.
Absolutely. And I always attribute a lot of the access to early pioneers like that, like you, again, Marcus Kaiser, Blues, kicking down those doors. I do want to know, how hard was it putting together anything like, because again, I know you all were doing events and things of that nature on a regular basis. How hard was it to do any of that back then, and compared to how it is to getting your things situated now? Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Like now, it's not that like doors are just fully kicked in, but it's slightly easier now. There are opportunities out there like an Access Venue Grant.
Sir. Yes, sir.
So I'm celebrating everyone that has gotten the Access Venue Grant. Those opportunities should exist. I wish they would have existed at the height of God City. I wish those opportunities. We were just reaching out to any and everyone that was willing to make space. It was difficult. A lot of times, while it was gracious enough to make that call, we would draft the emails together, and places like, do y'all have security? Asking us, can we provide security? It's like we're just some, nerdy black men that want to see our art on the wall, want to spin some records and have a good time just like anyone else. So those moments were very difficult. We did find ourselves justifying a lot. But what we never did do, and I'm really proud of when I look back at our experience, we never placated. We never demonized or diminished what we were doing to be able to fit into a space.
Absolutely.
And we never did that. And I'm really thankful for that. But I wish the opportunities existed then the same way they do now. But even now, it still takes a labor, like really laying out what does the plan look like. I think more spaces now are willing to take those calculated and intentional risks, knowing that, we are, we the creatives, we are the very foundation and fabric of this city. Like nothing exists in Charlotte without the hands of a creator being involved in some regards.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. And again, to continue on with that, again, we talk about community, and I feel like you've been one of the main pioneers of this current age that has been pushing collaboration and bringing people of different backgrounds together for the creative movement, i.e. Doomsday. So I was respectfully knighted by the one and only Dia into the Doomsday crew, but even then, this predated me, obviously. So give us the history of Doomsday, what it is, and how it came about, and how you really started pushing that.
Yeah, like I reached out to Rico. We had an opportunity that came about. Doomsday started at Goodyear Arts. We had an opportunity that just didn't work out initially. Had a plan that we was going to work on, and I just didn't really dot my I's across my T's on it. But there's opportunities and moments that when you think you got your best laid plan, God is plotting something else.
Amen.
And I've had to be able to, I've had to learn to embrace that.
Absolutely.
So the what I was initially planning didn't work out. So I reached out to Rico Renzi. And I said, hey, Rico, I got this idea. What about we do this exhibition? I'll just come up with, a name. We'll just roll with it for this first year. So the first year, the name of it was just Doomsday Clock. So that's what we rolled with. We later found out that name Doomsday Clock was actually owned by an organization. They reached out to us. They saw the promotional advertisement. They saw the material that Rico had created, reached out and said, we own this name, but we're cool with it if y'all allow us to be like maybe a sponsor for it. So they came down to check out the show. They wanted to maybe sponsor the next one. And I found out some of their politics. So once we found out some of the politics, like, nah, we're not even going to mess with that, Rico. Let's pivot. Let's pivot from that.
Yeah.
But let's find a way to keep this name, because that first show was really honoring, those who had lost during the pandemic, honoring the life of MF Doom. Like, what does it mean to like have this cultural collective experience of living through a pandemic? This is taken off the screen. Like, this is like a Walking Dead experience that we're actually going through. So we went with that name. The next year, Rico and I got together and we asked Renee Cloud, who was the gallery manager at Goodyear at the time, said, could you help us curate this show? Then reaching out to you and reaching out to Seth, would you be a part of this show? But not only be a part of it, will you help us eventually like plan and plot, what the performance for this could be? Reaching out to Glenn Ureta, another artist here, said, hey, can you help us figure out like what could this visually look like and tell? So it really started to take on this life of itself. And that's when the name Doomsday 704 came about.
Yes, sir.
The name stuck because we kept doing these different Doomsday iterations, like Doomsday Clock, Doomsday and Night, Doomsday Then and Now. It just kept like flipping it up a little bit. And after a while, Rico, Renee, and I sat down. I was like, this is more than just a show. This is really becoming a collective in different ways. It's not that we have this annual thing that we're doing, but in between the annual event, how do we love on each other and support each other individually to get to our next thing?
Amen.
So that's what it really came about, and this is a lifelong commitment for me.
Absolutely.
This is family.
Absolutely.
This is like, and I know people throw that around. I don't want to be like the Toretto's Fast and Furious or anything, but like, it's something real about that when you nurture and cultivate with individuals that know, and God City was just for me, when people know you when you had nothing, and then they see the possibility of the something, is something magically different. And I've always had the notion of I want those people in my life for a lifetime. It's easy for me to have people maybe come to me once the books are out there, the performances are there, I'm represented in the gallery spaces, whatever it is. But the individuals that were the day ones, when I just needed and you've been that for me, Faze, in a moments where you just need, and I hope it's all like the language that we take in.
Nah, do your thing.
But when you have a moment, it's like, shit, am I losing my fucking mind or what? And then you got that brother that you could be tender with and transparent with. It's like, yo, Faze, I need to go take a walk, brother.
Yes, sir.
Because this shit ain't making sense right now. It ain't adding up. And then you can get the comfort of knowing that, no, keep persevering. It'll work out. Keep persevering. There's a conviction in this work. Doomsday has become that for me in a lot of different ways.
That's absolutely heavy. So what has that been? Has that been your main series? You've had other series going on outside of that. Has Doomsday been your main baby?
Yeah, Doomsday is the main baby. Like, I want to ride with Doomsday. Like, what it's morphed into at this point is a film and performance art series that we've been doing at the Independent Picture House.
Yes, sir.
And this is our first year doing it, but I hope it continues to grow and morph. I'm already thinking about next year with this. So this year we did Doomsday Presents Blood, Myth, and Funk.
Yes, sir.
6 films that also have 6 performance responses to them. Next year, what I'm thinking about is Doomsday Presents Bloodlust and Blues. Ooh, so finding the right films and the right performances that can create this synergy and this dialogue that has always existed here in Charlotte. An Independent Picture House for me has been like a great playground to figure out what this can look like. I'm hoping this can go like, I want this to go global.
Absolutely.
Like this ideal of, cinema and performance art, it's not that it's new. This has been done in other spaces and places, but Charlotte has a uniqueness in the venues that have always been like elevating performance art, and this is like a time now that we can like couple, we can create that dialogue between the visual art at these different art institutes and the cinema that's out there, and like have a real communal dialogue versus operating in silos.
Absolutely.
An example of that, and then I want to pivot to whatever your next question.
No, I got you. No, for sure.
An example of that, David McGee has an exhibition that's currently on display at the Beckler Museum. This exhibition is phenomenal. Hands down, I think any performance artist, rapper, poet, dance choreographer to go in there, they're going to be inspired by that work. They may not always have the direct invitation to go and experience that work. He's also going to be in residency at the McCall Center.
Sir.
I'm reaching out to him now and say, hey, can I curate a series of films for you at the Independent Picture House? So the hope is that all of these things will start having a dialogue versus like these silos. Because I want people to look at our city and be like Charlotte is a destination for filmmakers, for poets, for rappers, for, whatever the thing is. When people think about it, I want them to think, damn, I need to visit Charlotte.
100%.
Yeah.
Heavy. I'm gonna ask you one more question. Then we're gonna pivot to another section of the talk show. What is the dialogue that you really want to have as everything that you do? What is the dialogue that you're trying to have, wanting to have? What is that?
Yeah, that there is something greater than self in the universe. That when someone is creating, and there's a moment where I sit down with pen and pad or at the keys, and I'm thinking, I'm about to craft this poem, and then something through the ethers come and like touch the work. And I have written things, I have performed at times and wrote down words and think I understand what's there on the page. And then you're on stage presenting in front of people and you understand your work for the first time with the people. So for me, it's like the dialogue is there is something greater than self in the universe. When I'm walking up to a mural or some form of visual art or come to one of your performances, for me, it is a performance that goes beyond like mind and body in the present moment. So that's what I'm hoping that people get out of it.
Understood.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, as we go ahead and pivot to this next section is called How Heavy is the Crown? Oh. All right. So heavy is the crown is basically what we want to know is what in your journey is the heaviest part of your journey, something that you experience or that you go through that us as the audience might not see, but you want them to be more aware of as you continue to work.
Oh, wow. I'll give a few,
please.
I'm still. I think forever in life I'll process through them. I would say one, earlier days, what's meant for home stays at home, and I mean like the sacredness of like what we discuss in certain kinds. And I'm a very transparent person. I try to be that way in all forms of life. But if I'm working with my brothers or whatever our feud may be or our conflict may be, it stays with us. It's not for everyone outside of the sacredness of our bonds and our relationships. That's important for me. That was a growing thing. I was one of those individuals, a writer. Like if it showed up in my life, it was going to show up in the writing. Mm-hmm. And just because it showed up in the writing didn't mean it needed to show up on the stage.
Understood.
It needed to be expressed in some form, but it didn't need to be shared in any form. So I would say that was important for me. Another one I would say is that give work time. And there have been projects that I've contributed to. I give you one. I did a chapbook of poetry called Nightshade. And I'm proud of that body of work. But when I look back at it now, it's not my best work. Absolutely. I could have sat on it and gave it more time. But I had to write. That's what I could write at the time. I had to write that to get to the next best thing that I could do. But I've learned to be patient with myself as a creative. And I'm at this point now that I'm craving having my first full manuscript in the world. Like, that's what every writer wants. Like, I want my first full manuscript. But I've created this arbitrary number in my head that when I get to X age, I got to have it out there in the world. And that's, like, so arbitrary. There's, like, it doesn't mean I'm a writer for the rest of my life. There is no retiring from being a poet for me.
Talk to him. Absolutely.
There's no retiring for that. So if the work finally gets a full, manuscript publication, in my 70s or whatever it may be, that's fine. But in between now and then, am I enjoying the process? How present can I be to enjoy the creative process as a holistic outlet for me? And I would say the third one is, family first. Like I got a little human I'm raising, got a 3-year-old daughter named Sabine, and that's my world, that's my universe. And there have been times where I got so caught up in the creative practice, she could, at the time, she would just non-verbally kind of put up her hand like it was a phone, because she knew I was doing to the phone. Like the phone became like a dangerous thing in our home because there were times I would pick up my phone before I picked up my child. And I don't want to have an experience where I miss out on the tenderness of her growth or the progression of her growth because I'm too busy trying to cultivate something else where what I should be cultivating is the art life with her.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think you found that balance between your creative lifestyle and, of course, your family lifestyle and personal lifestyle?
Yeah, I make them one and the same somewhat now. Like I try to I would say I sit down and I write about my family.
Absolutely.
If there's something going on, it shows up in the work. It may show up in like a long form metaphor. It may show up in some hidden or coded language, but it's definitely in the work.
Absolutely. Has that been hard to maintain both? Because again, a conversation that we've had is, of course, always been making sure that artists are paid right and being able to fund not just what they do in their creative side, but their life, their lifestyle and things like that. Has that been hard for you to be able to do that?
At times, it's less hard now. I'm at a job now where IPH celebrates that I'm a creative outside of their space. They protect my time with my family and protect my time as a writer. And I haven't always had a job like that.
Absolutely.
I've had jobs that have asked me to make a sacrifice that they knew was not a healthy sacrifice for me to make for my family, my social health, my mental health, my physical health. It definitely wasn't benefiting me financially, but there was something about that grind culture. You know, you're all talking about it now in all spaces. I was so caught up in the grind culture. So now for the first time, I would say I'm in a job that celebrates me as a creative outside of their space, and doesn't just celebrate it because it's a benefit to them. Celebrate it because like it is a benefit and to my life.
Absolutely. To
my livelihood. But it has not always been easy. It is easier today. Tomorrow, if you ask me, maybe a little different.
That's how I go, right?
But right now it feels very not that I'm complacent, and comfortable is the wrong word for it. But it feels divine. I will say that it feels very much like a gift to have what I'm experiencing right now.
That's heavy, absolutely, Dia. I really want to know what is your because again, a lot of the stuff does stem from what I've been recognizing is a lot of the stuff does stem from your spirituality, right? You know, you do have this very open soul, like since like the very first day I met you at the first one. I don't think that was the first Doomsday that I performed at. Was that the first one? I think it was the second one that we first met. Yeah. So the very first time I met you, it was love from the jump.
Yeah,
I very rarely got that at performances. So let's talk about just spiritualism real quick and just your thoughts on that, especially in this day and age where there's so much craziness going on. Yeah. Spirituality, I think, is one of those things that gets misconstrued very often and misused, mislabeled, misappropriated for different reasons. I would love to get your thoughts, considering your background. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like I'm really into liberation theology. That whatever we study or whatever we're digesting, is it helping us to get close to what we individually understand of what it means to be free? I take a biblical approach that if it is not talking, whether it is me as a poet or as a preacher, if I'm not talking about everybody being free, I'm not talking about anyone being free. And not all spaces, not all sacred spaces are really elevating that. You know, I've been in congregations that demonize individuals' orientation, sexuality, demonize music, and I was like, this is not the space for me. It doesn't make me feel healthy and whole. Around the age, and that shifted for me, drastic. I've always been this way, but there's a shift in my ability to see that. Around 15, and this connects to my creative practice.
Yes, sir.
Around 15, my mom said, you no longer got to go to church. And you know, phase that come from a black mom.
Yeah,
not getting that a lot.
that's like the trope. Like, I don't.
I did. I said, oh, this sounds great.
Really?
Sign up for me. Sign me up for that plan.
Absolutely.
So you don't have to go to church. So I stayed home, and during that time at home, like I mentioned before, I was going through my dad's album collections. My dad had this notorious poetry collection. I was already into comic books, so I had a pretty extensive collection at the time. But my dad also had these blaxploitation films. So I was going through the music, the blaxploitation films, reading the comics and poetry. And then eventually the values that my parents wanted me to gain at church, those values were affirmed in the stuff that I was listening to,
Absolutely.
reading, and watching. I'm trying to escape the traditional church, and I'm getting more church in my parents' home with the things in their home, the Jet and Ebby magazines, the things that showed me, what this black embodiment represented. So for me now, when I say the word sacred, I'm thinking about skate parks. I'm thinking about independent picture houses. I'm thinking about comic book stores, and I'm thinking about places that are non-traditional sacred spaces where community is being nurtured in these unconventional ways. They just don't see directly that the gospel is at work. So that's what I'm thinking about for me, and because I don't think heaven is going to be a place where there's some little bald, naked white babies, playing some harps or anything.
Absolutely.
I hope heaven really is a place where, if it is real, I hope it is a place where we all universally are practicing whatever our gifts and talents are. And where I see that happening at typically isn't our traditional sanctuary. Now, not to say it's not happening in those spaces, but I'm talking about spaces like comic book conventions. Like the relationship I was able to nurture with Wally, John, Antoine, and Marcus through a comic book convention. That's sacred. The relationship I've nurtured with you, and Rico, Renee, and Glenn, and Seth through Doomsday, that's sacred. So that's what I hope for everyone. That is what I desire for everyone. And it will look different for everybody.
100%. Yeah. That's beyond amazing, Dia. I definitely appreciate you sharing that with me. I would love to know what, if there is a final level, a final stage to the diade'angelo name, what does that look like? Wow. If there is one?
I'm still learning that. I can name a few things I hope to accomplish. I don't know what the final, and even if I did say a final stage,
it'd be more.
Or it'll be God somewhere laughing at me. It's like, I got something else planned for you. You don't even see it coming.
There you go.
Because what I've done, I didn't think I would do any of this. I didn't, persevering through undergrad, that was one thing. Pursuing the other degrees, I never thought I would do that. I'm a kid from Vietnam. And I didn't think I was going to accomplish some of that. Being able to even see individuals that I consider like and admire that come from the same source and space as me, sometimes that feels like just enough. Think about what J. Cole is doing coming out of 2-6. Like that sometimes feel like space enough. Think about what the Hornets are currently doing right now. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that feels like space enough. But the things in regards to what I want to accomplish, I want to do more sound installations.
Absolutely.
I mentioned the 8 tracks of my grandfather. I'm writing that poetry and dialogue, not necessarily for publication, but for me to, chop and screw his voice and my voice and blend them together. So when people enter into an art gallery or museum, they hear the conflation of our voices having this universal dialogue.
That's heavy.
I want to be able to document that so that my child can then have it and she can continue to create and layer that however she feels fit if she does desire to be a creative. So there are those things I want to continue to do. Right to my last breath. I hope my last breath is a poem. Like that is what I like when I'm taking my last breath, even the silence that may exist there, I hope someone will document it. There have been times like, please just document this moment. There may be some poetics in this somewhere.
Sure.
So I'm still discovering, but I'll say the last thing about that question. When I do, when the universe, the ancestors, God, aliens, whatever out there, like signals to me that this is the next step or thing, I hope that I'm just bold enough to just proclaim that and share that with people like yourself. That I don't hold it so sacred that I keep it to myself and then I don't do anything with it. Because if I say it to you out of love, then I feel held accountable to make an attempt to make the thing happen. And I think that is important. That's definitely scary and important for me to do, because there have been times I get an idea through the ether and I sit on it, don't do anything with it, and it doesn't move anywhere.
Absolutely.
Rico's been a good ally for making sure that I push those things. Rico reached out, this was months ago, reached out with an idea. It's like, hey, I think you should write for this publication. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's like, all right. He let it rest for a little while, but then he came back to it really sly and subtle. He mentioned it again. It's like, all right, I'll consider it. I threw out a pitch, and they didn't accept the initial pitch. It's like, that's not quite the one. However, don't give up on this. Go back to the drawing board. Yeah. So I went back to the drawing board that same night, sent it to him. It's like, hey, this is the one. So like sometimes we just got to speak it out into the universe. And it's not just, for me, it's not just from my lips to God's ears. It's from my lips to those that also love and support you, admire you, value you, appreciate you, to their ears also, so they can hold us, so they can affirm us, challenge us, and hold us accountable.
That's beautiful. D, that's incredible, sir. I appreciate that. And honestly, that kind of just blew my mind. I think if anybody need to hear that, I definitely need to hear that right now. As a artist, and I think a lot of music artists can relate to that, because we'll sit on songs thinking it's the next one, and then we'll just never release it and be like, man, if only we had just dropped it when we felt like it. So that hit right in my soul. So D, I definitely appreciate that. Before we wrap this up, I do have one more question for you, and then of course we got to end this out on a high note. But this last section is called Passing of the Crown. I want to know some of the people, artists, creatives, anybody in the city, and they don't even have to be in the city, anybody that you are familiar with that you can kind of see taking up that mantle and kind of running with it.
Oh my goodness, that's a great one as well.
Yes, sir.
I would say there's this poet here, and this individual, I don't want to bastardize what she's doing, and I think people just need to go out and check out what she's doing. But Olivia Dorsey Peacock. Mm-hmm. I am smitten by the work she's writing. She considers herself, she's a historian, a tea maven, and a poet. And to see those things live and breathe together is really unique.
Absolutely.
It's something it's something I can't say I've seen exist in the form that she's doing in a lot of ways. When I approach it, I'm thinking about how do my disciplines create something unique for me. When I say theologian or sound artist and poet, they live together in a unique way in my body, and she's doing something very similar through her own lens. Another one is Jordan Bailey, aka Young Static.
Shout out Young Static, sir.
Charlatan, much love for the West Side. Just really has been like laboring for quite some time, and I think if the chemistry between individuals like that continue to function and flow together, I don't even think it's like them, me passing the mic to them. I think it's more them destroying the mic to create what they wanted, whatever they want to be held in their hands.
Sir.
You know, so I think two of those individuals, I think there are two individuals, Charlotte-based creatives that we should keep an eye on.
Done deal. Absolutely. But I have to speak with them soon. Before we get up out of here, Dia, again, I want to thank you so much for just your time, your words, and just everything you do. Because again, I can't sing your praises enough. Again, when I mean you've opened up a lot of doors, not just for myself, but artists and creatives of different mediums. You've opened up that door to places that I never thought I would be in. I would have never thought I'd be in a museum. I would have never thought I'd be performing in movie theaters. I always thought it'd be regular venues, but you open my mind up to so many things that everything does seem like it's open and endless. And the opportunities are just for everybody, and you did that. And again, D, I definitely appreciate you for that. And again, I speak for all creatives when we say thank you for what you do, and we look forward.
Brother.
Of course, my brother. Before we get up out of here, Dia, we have to know, first off, what's coming up that we need to know about, and of course, where we can find you at, how we can support you.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. Thank you for the time. Thank you and the crew for the time. It means a lot to me, sincerely. You can find me online at social media at 1518 DIA. My website is the same thing, just in reverse, DIA 1518. And that's my address growing up, 1518 Pierce Street, Fayetteville.
Yes, sir.
I got to carry Fayetteville with me everywhere I go.
Talk to him.
But project, continue to cultivate Doomsday. See where this film and performance art series will go to next, so individuals can find more out about that on the website, the Independent Picture House, as well as I'm still writing this full manuscript. So I got several projects that I'm working on within the manuscript, but the most important part of that for me is the sound installation with my grandfather. But thank you and the crew, sincerely.
Of course, absolutely. Again, D'Angelo, I appreciate you, love you, thank you for everything. Again, this has been the Creative Crown Talk Show. Thank you so much for everybody tuning in. Shout out Nick Will, shout out Evan in the back, shout out Miss Label Productions. Again, I've been your host, Tony P. the Face Guy. Shout out for Artists by Artists. Shout out all the artists. If you're an artist that is in the city or outside the city doing your thing, make sure you tap in with us. And the next time, in the meantime, love you guys, appreciate you.